Welcome back to another episode of Boom or Bust, your home for NFL Draft Talk. I'm your host, Terry. Today doing the final thoughts on the cornerback class for the 2018 NFL Draft. It's another one. We're close. But man, another one of these groups, in a class that is starting to, look very, very average. This group definitely lacks the top tier talent, I would say, that you would want to see in a corner class. And it has really good depth, but it doesn't have great depth. So for me, I end up grading this class a C. And, as I mentioned before, I grade the top level talent out of 5, grade the depth out of 5, and get the average. So up top, you got the two that are unquestionable, and that is Denzel Ward and Josh Jackson. And both of them have real question marks. More so with Denzel for me, but definitely some question marks that could scare people with Josh Jackson, because Josh Jackson is a person that didn't prove he had the type of athleticism, at least in the combine, that people wanted to see. Now, watching the tape, if you're talking about explosion, ball skills, hand-eye coordination, all that stuff, ability to break on the route, short area quickness, no question. But the biggest thing with a corner is the long speed. What's your ability to run down the field? And even though it wasn't like a horrible 40 like some of these corners, it was slower than people wanted. And so I believe we're in like low 4.5. And so wanting to see that 4.3 that gets everybody hot and heavy, he didn't get that. Now, will teams devalue him because of that? Honestly, I don't think so. I think the media sets the narrative and people just follow that we don't know what the teams actually think. I don't think people could look at Josh and devalue him for it. I think what happens is people that like Josh will not say anything against the narrative because they want people to devalue him so that they could pick him up at a better spot. So that's the gamesmanship of the draft, is that even if somebody that quote unquote lost draft stock is still high on your board, you're not going to say anything to give away your hand. So you never really know what teams are actually thinking. And it's reverse too. If a guy's low on your board, you're not going to say that, oh, he's low on our board. No, you're going to continue to give him praise so other people think you might be interested. So that's the fun of it. But anyway, and then you got Denzel Ward, who, for me, I've said this the whole time, the technique is not there. Now, some of that applied to Marshawn Lattimore last year, scheme-wise, with the whole bail coverage and all that, except when there's the time to make a play on the ball, and when, it's no longer the scheme, it's just the ball in the air. Marshawn showed the ability to make plays and to understand where he was and to time the ball, whereas Denzel, not so much. Denzel has shown almost no ability to get his head around and play the ball. All he does is play the man, and that can be scary. And we haven't seen him make plays on the ball, whether it's driving on the ball or in the air, because he's covering the man. And while he might be a super athletic, the question is, can he get the technique down? And I don't know. And so now you got your top tier guys are good prospect. Really, I gave them both level 4, but you have no 5-star prospect this year. And then after those two, it drops off quite a bit. I know a lot of people are saying Mike Hughes is a first round, which is weird because Mike Hughes ran, I think, a little slower than Josh Jackson in the 40, but yet no one has changed the narrative on him at all. And the narrative was that he was a speedster and a very athletic guy that you could mold into a good corner, yet he ran about as fast as Josh Jackson, who now all of a sudden his draft stock just plummeted because he didn't run a 4.3. So I don't know. That's why I don't believe that stuff. But if you watch Mike Hughes, you see he's not a burner, plays a lot of off coverage. And when he plays man coverage, he has to get very grabby in order to stay in front of his man. So Mike Hughes, not a fan for me, but if people consider him number 3 corner, that's a drop off from the first 2. And so then you go through the depth though, and there's pretty good depth. So anyway, getting to some of the guys that I like, and I've already kind of glanced over this, that I really like Josh Jackson. No need to continue to talk about him. But then after Josh Jackson, you got to go down to Carlton Davis from Auburn. That's a guy that I really, really enjoy, because for whatever reason in college, there's not a lot of jamming. And it's partially because you can still, jam people after 5 yards. So a lot of the, off the line stuff is mirror match, and then you jam them as you go down the line. But in the NFL, you can't do that. So a lot of it is pressing and jamming somebody right off the line to disrupt the timing, which I would like to see in college anyway. Even if you could do it downfield, it's better to stick a guy at the line if he can't get off your jam and you completely take him out the route. I love that. I mean, we've seen not so much now, but you see that with Richard Sherman. But there's a lot of guys that made their living in the league as press corners. And so Carlton is one of those guys that you see when he put hands on guys at the line, he can keep them there for a good amount of time. Now, he's not going to be able to do that to everybody in the NFL, but you at least got a guy that's his game. He's a big physical press corner. He's 6'1", which is a tall corner, but he's really long too. So, and he can play with the ball in the air. So he's got a long radius. He has pretty decent ball skills. He's not the fastest guy and he's not the most athletic guy. So then that's where your physical corner is going to have to come into play. But you talking about a cover 2 team, or a 2-man team or a bump and run, whatever, man, he's going to be good. Now, I like physical corners with length to them that can make plays when the ball's in the air. So, he's a guy that I think you're going to see the best of him is yet to come. And then, scrolling down, I like Isaiah Oliver out of Colorado. Again, he is a decathlete on track, so 2-sport athlete. Lot of athleticism, a lot of good body control. I think he's rock solid. He's not a speedster. He's not a straight physical guy. I think he can just do a lot of things well. And like I said, a disciplined athlete, gives you some return ability. And so I think he'll be suited for either man or zone coverage, and he'll be able to play a little bit of both and, do both equally well, which is not easy as you might think, to find a corner that plays zone and man as well. And so those are the guys that I kind of really like with Josh Jackson, the ones I feel comfortable with. And I think, corner is a lot about athleticism. It's a lot about making athletes, that can really cover other athletes and just stay with them. But there is a lot of fine tuning and technique and instincts that go into it. And, it can be very hit or miss. It's very thin line between hit or miss with these guys. So talking about some of the guys that are kind of risky, speaking about missing, and I already brought him up, but I'll say again, Mike Hughes, that's a guy that I would watch out for because he hasn't been playing a position that long, at a high level. And I think people are misjudging what his game is, and I think he's raw. He's going to have to really work himself and to show people what he can do. Then you got, I would say Kevin Tolver out of LSU who's coming out. Not highly touted as far as I know. He was as a 5-star high school recruit, but for what we hear, he's got a lot of issues in the building with the coaching staff, so that's not good. And then his production wasn't that great. And he doesn't look like he got much better in college, and that's a huge red flag. Seems more like a diva that's here to get money than play football. So that's something you gotta look out for. People might get intrigued by his LSU pedigree and then by his size, but from everything we hear, he's hard to handle, and so it's going to be more of a boom or bust case, like whether you can get him down pat or otherwise he's just going to, flame out for you. And then You got, I would say Anthony Everett out of Alabama, who, by all accounts, Levi Wallace is the better corner at Alabama, but he was a walk-on, and it didn't really show in his play, but it showed in his testing and athleticism, that it's just not what NFL teams want, but he showed that he could play. Anthony, on the other hand, he showed on tape that he's got a long way to go, but his testing numbers are off the charts. A lot of speed, a lot of change of direction, all that. And so he's definitely a project. He's someone that you're betting on in the long term, like I said, taking the athlete, teaching him some technique, and letting him cover people. But it's night and day between those two, but Anthony's going to be the actual prospect that's coveted, I believe, just because of his tangibles. But being at Bama with Saban, who is a D-back guru, and never really, flipping the switch kind of worries me. I think there are some guys on the front at Alabama, especially D-line, that they can come out with a good work ethic, but they still got room to grow technique-wise. But defensive back, usually these guys are pretty well taught. And so if you were there and you were starting and you just never got it to click, that kind of, worries me a little bit. And yeah, I mean, those are the guys that are risky. I mean, a lot of these people are average, but the risky ones are there. And I guess you could throw in Tavares McFadden. I don't know where he stands right now. He had a real bad combine. And even watching on tape, he didn't produce like we thought he would this year. And so from what I'm hearing, his previous year was better. I don't know. Didn't watch it, but, looking at those numbers, that scares you. It's one thing that not have a 40, like a 4.3 that everybody wants. It's another to run in like the 4.6s close to the 4.7 as a corner. That's a huge red flag. So, that's somebody I would probably say is risky too. And then talking about some of the sleepers, I think for me, the biggest sleeper, well, I guess there's two. Number one, they're both slot corners, but number one be Dante Jackson out of LSU, ran a blazing 40, highly explosive, smaller guy, but I think he's built to be a slot corner. And then you're talking about Duke Dawson out of Florida, who, played inside and out. So he's built and experienced at slot, but I think he also has the size and explosion to eventually work his way out on the outside if you needed him to. But he's a tough-nosed dude that can make the plays in the run-in, pass game, and the slot. So I think he'll be fine too. So yeah, those are my guys. So that's my thoughts. Go to the comment section. Let me know what you think about this year's cornerbacks. Any guys in particular you want your team to go after. Start that conversation. Thumbs up, subscribe, share it around, and thank you for listening.